sport gives you a label that you often feel the need to buy into. So the label of an athlete, pro sports person, you then start to emulate whatever behaviors you think are associated with that kind of stereotype. Like you see that quite a lot, at least publicly anyway. And but we do that in general life, don't we? I mean, are not that we're not that playful probably with like putting different hats on. Um, I can't remember where I read this, but it was about it might have been an Alan Watts thing actually. I don't know, but it was about let's not take ourselves so seriously about who we think we are because largely that is either by chance or subconscious or it's just we're a creation of the people or the things that are going on around us. So try on different masks and faces because it's very difficult actually to live our lives without wearing one mask or another. And I
Yeah.
thought that was interesting because I am someone perhaps similar to you. We try and live our lives as authentically as possible. But like, what does that what does that really mean? I mean, how much control do we have in terms of the authentic self that we present? Because ultimately, probably to one degree or another, we're presenting a self. Do you know what I mean? And so, um, I think people playing around with like, oh, I am this very serious person, but I can also be this very playful, silly person. I can be very intellectual. I can also be a complete fool. Like I don't like it when and I think you pick up on this when you meet people, right? Like people who hold you to account for who you were or who they think you are.
Yeah.
That's incredibly uncomfortable position to be in when someone else does that. But we do that to ourselves as well, don't we? And it creates this conflict.
I found I hold myself to an unrealistic standard of this idea of someone that I've created in my mind. And I know exactly what you're feeling, especially when you bump into someone you haven't seen in years and they, again, depending on the individual, like the the experience that they've had of you in the past, what is it of you now? And some people come in that with an open mind. So some people come up and go like, well, okay, this is the Lewis that I knew back then. But some people will come in and be like, oh, well, you were like this. And I think it's more actually the people that have been in my sports teams that I spent a lot of time around. They're the ones that have this ingrained idea. And it's probably more the people that I meet that are still in the sport. And I always say they're still in the bubble because they haven't yet come out of that bubble to then really have to dig into like who they are. And my therapist and I were talking about this recently around really what is authenticity, and that authenticity is the entirety of you. It's the parts of you that are ugly, that are good, that are bad, the dark, the light, the indecisive, the not knowing. And that's your current authenticity of you right now. And that chaos, there's like beauty in it as well, in understanding that you may not have all the answers figured out, but that's you at your like authentic self right now. You may have this idea of something that you're striving towards, but that's good because you're trying to develop, you're trying to improve, and you're striving for better for yourself because you're aware that you want to make a conscious, better environment internally, externally, for people around you. But understanding that whatever you're at right now is an authentic version of you. It's when you are actively showing something that you can't uphold. You're a version of yourself that is not sustainable, is quite literally an avatar and something that is not really you. And you're only doing it to appease to people that you don't really care. You just think you care about what they think of you. A great place for me to get to is I don't care what people think about me, but I care about them. That for me is where I try to get to. Whatever I'm presenting of myself, I know that I'm doing it because it's me and trying to break the shackles of what potentially this sport or environment had created for me before, and be as authentic as you can be, but knowing that that's authenticity isn't always going to be positive. It's going to be ugly, and me being a shit bloke sometimes, and getting things wrong, and not being perfect at things.
Yeah, it's such a good explanation of it, because I think sometimes we can talk about the authentic self as being something that's quite tidy, and yet so much of it is presenting the unknown, and by virtue of the way our brains have developed, and we are not comfortable with the unknown because we don't know how it's going to be received. So we try and control as much as that presentation as possible. But the authentic self is, by virtue of it, of what it is, going to be the unknown. Like, so much of it is the unknown, and kind of throwing that all out there is such a curious experience, and why it's so difficult. And I think that's why we all struggle with that. But it's powerful, isn't it, when you sense it in someone else, or even when you find that you've done it. I mean, it's part of flow, I think, isn't it? Like, it's definitely, I'd put that in the kind of flow category, when you're able to just surrender that authentic self into a scenario, and that's the experience for me. It's not a channeling or a funneling of it, really. When I've experienced that, it's the release, it's the letting go, and a surrender to whatever comes in this situation now is my authentic self. Like, and you're at peace with the other person or the other people being accepting of that or not, and that's kind of on them. That's not on you. Again, challenging as a leader, because we're taking it, kind of bringing it back a little bit to the sporting examples. When you present your authentic self to a group, what if they all decide they don't like it? You've then become a bit redundant as a leader. So you kind of can't switch. It's difficult to switch off to that. Now, the reality is, would any decent group of people ever truly switch off to you because you present an authentic self? Because I think there's so much power in the authenticity that people would recognize that and have an appreciation for that. Whether they, because it might challenge them on some stuff, or it might not suit their preference, that's kind of probably secondary to the trust, the respect, and the result of the recognition of your authenticity. I'm making my head hurt a bit trying to unpack this.
No, it's also how you receive someone that is being authentic, even if you don't like it. So you can respect someone for being, I don't know, slightly more aggressive in the way they talk to someone, but you go, well, they're just being them. There's this kind of beauty in it. I was sort of thinking back to when I was 18 and I'd been out in Australia, and I flew out there and I was with a family that I was in house with, and they're like my Australian family, and the father of the family was he was quite high up in cricket in South Australia, and the second night I was there, we went to the cricket club, and I'm having my first beer with him, and we're sitting at the bar, and he'd met a vast, his job was just meeting people in all these different communities and levels of cricket and sport all around the country and in life. And he sort of looked at our club, and there was this, we're looking around the bar of all the different people that were in the club, and he was like, this is a great group of people, because they're vastly different. They come from tough upbringing. Some people have got jobs in the cities. Some people there's a huge array of people. And he said, from my experience, that is the beauty of it. There are going to be people here that rub people up the wrong way. There's going to be people here that do great things that make you feel good. But he's like, the thing that for me is being curious as to why people behave in the way they do and not judge them on it. And it was kind of like the first time I'd heard that Walt Whitman quote of be curious, not judgmental, but it came from him in a slightly different way. And it was just a real eye-opener, and it was a great experience for me as an 18-year-old, because just to literally look at someone through whatever they were presenting at the time and just be genuinely curious as to like, what got you to this place? And even now, when you see someone expressing, it might be anger or frustration, and you can think, okay, that's an emotion that we don't kind of really feel like, but it's something going on for them that's really authentic. It's their emotional brain kicking off and expressing itself, and they're expressing an emotion. And it's actually something that I'm having to tap into a little bit more. Not that I'm trying to tap into more anger, but I'm trying to tap into the range of emotions that you can express. Because for me personally, sport suppressed quite a lot of my emotions, and it's a huge cauldron of reasons as to why that did it. But for me, it's then being curious as to like what's the experience someone's going through when they're showing this full range of emotions. And again, like that's why when we see it happen on sport, we can be judgmental, or we can look at it and go, wow, we can empathize with, because I'm sure everyone listening has been really angry at one stage. Someone has been really sad or really jubilant and joyous, and all of these different emotions that you could feel. And everything that's there is authentic. It's the person of what they're presenting right now. Doesn't mean they're where they maybe want to be, but it's not. Inauthenticity could be, you see a lot of stuff around men's mental health where men are holding it together when inside they're really struggling. You could argue that's inauthentic because you're presenting a version of yourself that's not real, that's not the true experience of what you're going through. Hey, if you've enjoyed that video, then you can click right here to watch the full unedited version of that episode. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this channel by clicking the button below. I'll see you soon.